Chapter 146. As soon as Wrath acknowledged his defeat, the messages announcing his victory popped up, one after the other. All stats have increased by 5. As Raon was smiling in excitement from the increased stats, the second message appeared. The unique title, "The One Who Bamboozled the King," has been created. The second reward was a title with a great name. Who the hell created a title like that? Wrath frowned in irritation. I don't like it. I don't know who named it, but I can see why I got the title. Raon snickered and called upon the title's explanation. The One Who Bamboozled the King. This title is given to those that bamboozled the king's dignity with a method other than power. Ability: upon conversing with someone in a higher position or with more strength, the other party's favor and trust is increased. A ray of light shone in Raon's red eyes as he read the description. This is pretty good. It was really nice that the title made it easier to convince his opponents, as it wasn't always possible to settle conflicts with a fight. Since Wrath and Sloth had appeared, it was possible that he would encounter the other demon kings in the future. The title could make all the difference in crises like that. And it should work against the heads of houses as well. Since it should be also effective against the most powerful warriors like Glenn, the title was beneficial in many ways. Poof. Wrath snorted upon reading the title's description. Do you believe a mere title like that would work against the King of Essence? It's impossible for you to convince the King of Essence. But it was already possible. Convincing Wrath was a piece of cake, since he just needed to mention the apple meat pies or mint chocolate. The King of Essence is an aloof existence. He doesn't listen to what other people tell him. You'd be way better off with some stats instead of a title like TH. Oh, don't worry about that. What? The stats are coming now. With a small smile, Raon pointed at the next group of messages. You've achieved the 6th victory against Wrath. You've gained additional stats with the effects of 6 consecutive victories. Strength has increased by 2. Energy has increased by 2. Stamina has increased by 2. He got 2 points in 3 stats thanks to his 6 consecutive victories. What a great harvest. He got 9 in all of his stats and 2 to 3 points in several individual stats. It was the first time he had gotten that many stats at once since he obtained the system. How many stat points did you even get today? I don't know. I think it's about 11 points in terms of all stats. 11? Did you just say 11? Wrath's hand was trembling like a leaf, coldness spreading from him. Damn it! Those 11 points all came from the King of Essence's main body. I suppose. Raon calmly nodded. You sucked them out from Sloth and extorted from the King of Essence. You are a damn spinebreaker. By the way, what is this? Since he was talking about Sloth, Raon raised his wrist and pointed at the black flower bracelet. Why do you think the King of Essence would tell you about it? Wrath snorted after staring at the bracelet for a while. You should discover what it is on your own, since the King of Essence has no reason to tell you about it. I guess you don't know either. Raon snickered and shrugged his shoulders. Even though you are a demon king, you are still ignorant about so many things. What kind of bullshit are you spouting? There's nothing in the world that the King of Essence doesn't know. Then what is this? I'm not going to tell you. That's because you don't know. You damn weasel. Wrath finally burst in anger. An overwhelming coldness and wrath emerged and started stabbing him, like spikes. Kring! The 25 points of wrath also awakened and started gnawing at his body and soul from the inside. This is rather. Raon lowered his head, hand trembling. When Sloth came to you, the 15 points of wrath weren't properly merged with your soul. Not even 10 of them were effective back then. Wrath started pressuring Raon's body, increasing the emotion of wrath even further. But now, all 25 points of wrath are completely awakened. Your body shall become mine now. You are pretty delusional. Raon grit his teeth to use the 10,000 Flames cultivation and glacier at the same time. The aura that contained the heat of a volcano dashed through his mana circuit to melt the coldness, and Glacier's wall of ice blocked the wrath trying to penetrate his brain. That wasn't all. His soul level, which had increased after enduring Sloth's power and Wrath's interruption, crushed the emerging emotion. How? I didn't just take your emotion of wrath without a plan. Raon wiped the sweat flowing down his forehead and smiled. I was certain that it would allow me to grow stronger, even more than the wrath I received. He suggested the trade because he was confident that he could handle the 15 points of wrath he received. Wrath's attack, weakened by the Ring of Fire, the 10,000 Flames cultivation in Glacier, wasn't unbearable. He could endure it as much as he needed to. Impossible. Wrath didn't give up and poured even more power into it, but Raon also increased the strength of his aura to protect his mind and body. Rumble. After the power struggle lasted for about 30 minutes, a blue window appeared in front of Raon's eyes. You've endured Wrath's interference. Agility has increased by 1. The message was telling him that he managed to endure Wrath's interference. It was the second time he had received that message in one day. Is it my birthday? Damn it! As Raon was laughing at salty Wrath, Dorian opened the door to the scout's quarters and entered. Ha! His jaw dropped upon finding Raon in perfect shape, then he ran up to him. You woke up. Tears welled in his eyes as he placed his hand on the bed. How is your condition? I'm fine. Raon nodded, rotating his shoulder. He wasn't just fine, he was in the best condition possible. Ah, that's a relief. How long have I been unconscious? It's been 4 days, including today. Dorian sighed and stood up. You should wash yourself for now. You also need to drink some water and eat some soup. He put his hand in his belly pocket as he spoke. He took out a wash bowl, a cup, and a soup bowl, then placed them on the round table. Why are you carrying a wash bowl? And how did you just take the soup out of there? I was prepared for when you woke up. Dorian smiled joyfully while pouring washing water into the wash bowl. He used a water bottle to fill the cup before putting it in Raon's hand. Thank you. Raon smiled slightly and approached the table. Realizing that Dorian had been carrying all that for his sake, he felt warmth in his heart. I'm going to report to the commander. Huh? Wait. He wanted to stop him since it wasn't something worth reporting, but Dorian had already left the room. He is so impatient. Raon clicked his tongue and finished washing his face. He washed his mouth with water, then started eating the soup, which had a variety of sliced vegetables. It had an excellent flavor, nutty and neat at the same time. He could also feel the texture of the vegetables from time to time, which made it fun to eat. Yua must have made this one. It was a proper soup, made with a recipe. It must have been Yua's work, rather than Dorian's. You are right. I can sense the pineapple girl's feelings in the taste. Even though Wrath had been salty, he was now licking his lips right next to him. The Demon King really was easy to please. It's a skill befitting the King of Essences made. What are you doing? Keep eating already. Phew. Raon shook his head at Wrath, who kept mumbling, and kept eating the soup. The food went down effortlessly, not only because he was hungry, but also because it was really delicious. He finished the dish in no time. As he started drinking the water, Dorian opened the door and entered. Did you already finish? Dorian smiled, looking at the empty dish and cup. I was hungry. And there was a glutton that kept urging him on. Raon let out a small sigh over Wrath. No matter how he thought about it, Wrath wasn't a gourmet, he was a glutton that liked eating. The commander said he wants to see you. Do you think you can come? I shall go if he calls me. He couldn't refuse the commander's summons. And I have to explain the situation to him. Since it was obvious he would ask how he made Sloth leave, he had to explain it to him at some point. He had already thought about an excuse for that, so there was no problem meeting him right away. Humans naturally have lots of suspicion. I'm curious how they are going to deal with this matter. Wrath's grin looked like he was hoping for a devastating development as he patted his belly. Your wish won't come true, so mind your own business. Raon pushed Wrath, who tried sticking to him, away. He then put on his outerwear before standing up. Let's go. Ha? Sir Raon? He's up. Sir Raon. How is your condition? As soon as Raon left the scouts' quarters, the scouts flocked to him and asked about his condition. Their wet gazes were full of worry. I'm fine. I'm completely recovered. Ha! That's a relief. I was seriously worried. Raon waved his hand with a smile, and the scouts breathed out sighs of relief. It wasn't just the scouts. Everyone that saw him on his way to the commander's room kept worrying about his body, to the point where he felt uncomfortable. They are looking at me way differently than before. If they saw him as a hero before, they were now worshipping him as a god, although that was a bit embarrassing to admit. Moreover, people that used to speak to him casually were now addressing him as Sir. What's going on? He could understand their gratitude because he saved their lives, but it was strange that they suddenly started calling him Sir. There must have been another reason for it. Once he reached the commander's room, still wondering about the reason, he could hear the word. Zigheart. It was a word that shouldn't have appeared there. Dorian? Ah, yes. Dorian scratched the back of his head. Apparently, he was already aware of it. Our identity has been revealed. But the commander revealed it himself. Oh, I see. It was probably because he couldn't hide them as mere mercenaries anymore, as the scale tipped too far. Then, does everyone know about it already? Yes, but you don't need to worry about it. After all, we didn't reveal it ourselves. I know, it's just... He shook his head bitterly. I just feel like they won't easily approach us anymore like before. There's a different reason for that. A different reason? Yes, let's go upstairs for now. Dorian flinched, pointing at the headquarters in front of them. All right. Raon nodded and went up to the conference room. Unlike what he expected, Milan and Tarion weren't the only ones in the conference room. All of the other officers were there, as well. It looked like everyone was gathered there, except for the officers on a mission or on guard duty. Raon checked the people's faces, then breathed out a sigh of relief. Everyone's alive. He was worried that a problem might have occurred, but fortunately no one was seriously injured. Stop pretending to be a good person. Wrath smiled coldly and sat on his head. Even if you saved their lives, they would fear you, who might be connected to the demons. You'd better worry about yourself. That might be the case. Raon nodded. It was completely possible, considering how people acted in his previous life. However, there was a big mistake that Wrath was making. Raon didn't save them because he wanted something in return. He just wanted to save them. Since he didn't have any expectations, there was no reason for him to be disappointed, no matter the outcome. Greeting the commander. Raon organized his thoughts and bowed at Milan. It's nice to see you awake. Sit down over there. Yes. He sat at the chair located in the center, following Milan's gesture. I thought it'd take a long time for your recovery, but you've already recovered, even stronger than before. Milan exclaimed in surprise after checking his complexion. Countless geniuses have visited here in order to train, but none of them was as fast as you when it came to becoming stronger. I was just lucky. It's not about luck. It's your will and your ability. You are going to surpass even me soon enough. Milan shook his head, telling him to stop spouting nonsense. The other officers also smiled. I can speak comfortably since you are completely recovered. He leaned towards the table. How did you make the monster leave? Raon lowered his chin slightly, the movement easily missed. I knew it would come down to this. It was an obvious question, one that he knew he would be asked. And of course, he had already prepared an answer. I'm curious about what kind of excuse you were going to give, since they should also be aware of the fact that Sloth is a demon. Wrath giggled in anticipation. Wait. I asked you the question, but you don't need to answer. As Raon was about to tell him the excuse he'd prepared, Milan raised his hand. Everyone here knows that he is a demon, a monster as strong as a demon king on top of that. You must have made a trade in order to make him leave. Indeed. Just as he expected, they roughly knew how it went. And a demon of that caliber must have asked for your soul and body. Raon's response was delayed because of Milan's unexpected reaction. I knew it. So that's what happened. Raon. Milan and the officers bit their lips. It looked like they took that delay as a confirmation. This is a strange development. Rath's raised eyebrows were trembling in anxiety. Seriously, you. What? No, I just, As Raon tried to give the excuse he'd prepared, Milan suddenly stood up, the other officers following him. Thank you. Raon. Thank you. Milan and the officers bowed at once. Receiving the sudden yet polite expressions of gratitude, Raon and Rath's eyes widened. Why are you doing this? He could understand that they were thankful to him for saving their lives, but it felt a bit excessive. Moreover, he didn't even say anything yet. You don't need to say any further. That's right. We know that it's not easy to talk about a trade with a demon. Milan and Tarion shook their heads at the same time. You must have made a trade, staking your soul and body. What are you talking about? Why would this bastard stake his body and soul? Rath's jaw dropped at the ridiculous development. We aren't idiots. We already know that something you hold dear has been taken hostage by the demon. He is right. We all realize how much of a struggle Sir Raon went through on his own, while we were unconscious. Sir Raon. The officers' gazes were filled with sadness and deep emotions. I think they are idiots. Rath wrinkled his nose over the strange assumptions they were making. I pay my respect to your decision to sacrifice your soul in order to save Haben Castle, Raon Zieghart. We are forever indebted to you. Thank you, Sir Raon. The officers clenched their fists, expressions saddened. Some of them even had tears in their eyes. What kind of madness are you spouting? This cheater isn't the one who gave away his soul. It was the stupid sleepyhead. Rath yelled, hitting Milan's head with his small fist. A human being has scammed the Demon King. The one that lost his soul wasn't this bastard, it was the King of Essence and that stupid sloth. Even though they couldn't hear him, Rath kept shouting and hovered around the officers' heads. There's a saying on the battlefield. Sword for sword, blood for blood, and life for life. An auspicious light was reflected in Milan's eyes. Since you sacrificed your soul and body to the Demon King in order to save us, we shall pay you back accordingly. Of course we shall. Obviously. The officers nodded in agreement. Qua. I'm so frustrated that it's killing me. This bastard just benefited from the Demon Kings by scamming them. Come back to your senses. No matter how much Rath screamed and struggled, the officers' respect didn't stop. This feels like a sweet potato is blocking my throat. If only I could say something, I'll trade a part of my soul for it. Please. Let me say something. He stretched his face with his hand, screaming that he was dying. Milan and the officers walked in front of the table, facing Raon head-on. Thud. They knocked the left side of their chests, where their hearts were located, with their right hands. Then they straightened their backs. It was the battlefield's expression of respect and praise of the highest degree. We know Haben Castle will support you, Raon Zieghart. Ah. Raon swallowed harshly, his mouth dry. Goosebumps appeared at the sight of the seriousness in everyone's eyes. Coo. On the other hand, Rath went limp like a flat balloon and shook his head. What a shitty world. I should just die. Yes, I need to die so I won't see them anymore. Chapter 147. Facing their gazes, Raon clenched his fist. Their clear, unwavering eyes told him that they were serious about following him. I'm speechless. There was no way he could tell them, actually, I'm the one that scammed the Demon King when faced with those eyes. Why is that frivolous snout of yours tightly shut right now? Tell them the truth. That you bamboozled the Demon King. Rath pounded on Raon's shoulder, urging him to tell the truth. He wasn't wrong. Raon wanted to reveal the truth to a certain extent, because of how they were acting towards him. Actually, I told you, you don't need to say anything. When Raon slowly opened his mouth, Tarion raised his hand. What? It's well known that mentioning the contents of a trade with a demon makes the trade even more disadvantageous for you. You shouldn't tell us anything, since we all know what happened. Tarion smiled gently, telling him that he already understood everything. Arg, I'm going insane. Why are you acting up when you don't even know anything? Wrath went to Tarion and started pecking his head like a woodpecker. There is no such thing as being at a disadvantage from mentioning the contents. And he is actually the one that benefited from the trade. He kept thrashing his chest in frustration. No, what I'm trying to say is, you don't need to say anything. The captain of the Wolf Mercenary Corps, Beto, smiled. He had his fingers locked together, hands behind his head. We decided to stand behind you regardless of what happened that day. You don't need to say anything. All of them must have a hole in their brains. I'm sure their reasoning abilities are all in the negative. Wrath started foaming at the mouth. It looked like he was going to faint again. But you aren't from Haben Castle, are you? Raon tilted his head slightly, looking at Beto. He was curious about why a mercenary corps captain, who was supposed to follow the money, was agreeing with them. Even the mercenaries know how valuable our lives are. That's why we want to repay our debts properly. Beto stroked the wolf nameplate, which had a wolf carved on it. It's not just me. The mercenaries have also agreed. We can't follow you everywhere, but we will risk our lives for you any time. The playful gleam disappeared from his eyes. Beto was also serious about wanting to support him. It's not just the mercenaries. The swordsman divisions, knight orders, and the soldiers, everyone agreed to stand behind you. That was the reason we announced your name. Milan looked around at the officers, one after the other, as he smiled. So, that was why. Raon finally realized why people were looking at him differently on his way to the conference room. They were being more careful, since they'd all decided to follow him. I'm not such an amazing person. I'm not even from the direct line of Zieghart. We are already aware of that fact. You aren't a member of the direct line, but the strong blood of the destructive king of the north is flowing through your veins. Milan shook his hand, telling him it didn't matter. The expressions of the people standing next to him didn't change either. Are you of the same mind? Raon looked at the Snowstrikers' leader Edquil, who was standing on his right. Of course. I'll follow you no matter what you do, no matter where you are. Edquil knelt to one knee and punched the ground. It was thanks to Sir Raon that I realized what's more important than life. Please allow me to follow you. He wasn't only saying that he wanted to support him or help him, but he was literally saying that he would follow him. Actually, he was the first one. Milan stepped up and grabbed Edquil's shoulder. He said that he would follow you and asked me to expel him from Haben Castle. He lowered his eyebrows at the memory of that absurd statement. Raon looked into Edquil's eyes once again. He was even more serious than Milan and the other officers. He was for real. Did he just say that annoying guy was the first one to say he wanted to follow you? Ha! I don't even know anymore. Screw this. Wrath started giggling, saying that he gave up. It looked like he had finally lost his mind. We also made sure the story about your trade with a demon wouldn't spread. No one else will know, so don't worry about it. Raiden confidently knocked his chest. It looked like he used the scouts to stop the rumor from spreading. Ha! Raon caught his breath and straightened his back. Everyone's thoughts and feelings touched his heart, it felt fuzzy. Thank you. Since it came down to that, he had no other choice but to accept it. Raon bowed at the people that were looking at him with trust. I'm looking forward to your help. Whether you desire to become Zieghart's head of house, or want to live as an average swordsman, we still always stand behind you. Milan smiled broadly, which was uncommon of him. Then, can I make my first request of the commander? Request? Of me? There was one thing I've always wanted to request. I'm listening. He nodded, gesturing that anything was fine. Can you spar with me in 4 months? Raon didn't want to miss the last opportunity he could get in Haben Castle. That's not a difficult request. But do you think 4 months will be enough? Yes, that should. Crimson combative spirit was reflected in Raon's eyes. Allow me to avoid a disgraceful defeat. Since one bowl of soup wasn't enough to fill his stomach, Raon and Dorian headed to the branch of frost after leaving the conference room. Ha! Sir Raon. Once they opened the door and entered, Yua, who'd been cleaning the tables, came running at them. Are you okay now? Yes. He'd heard the same question countless times that day, but he couldn't help smiling because it was Yua that said it. What a relief. Yua fluttered her twin tails, which looked like bunny ears, and sniffled. Yua kept visiting you to drop off some food and snacks. The soup you had earlier was also made by Yua. Dorian pat Yua's head to praise her. I see. As he'd expected, Yua had made that delicious soup. There was no snack though. Ahem, that's because I was a bit hungry. Dorian awkwardly cleared his throat and turned his head away. Anyway. Raon snickered and sat at the table. Can I order right now? Of course. Grandfather is up as well. Grandfather. Yua shouted towards the kitchen, and the manager, whose complexion was much better now, came running out. You are here. He took the bandana off his head and bowed politely. I wasn't in my right mind last time, and I couldn't even thank you properly. Thank you for saving us. Me, too. Thank you for saving me and grandfather. Yua copied the manager and bowed at a 90-degree angle. You don't need to do all that. Raon shook his head and made the manager and Yua stand. It was just making him feel embarrassed, since he didn't save them to get that kind of treatment. I heard that I managed to survive thanks to Sir Raon's quick first aid. I don't even know how to repay this favor. Your healthy appearance is enough reward for me. Raon smiled gently and shook his head. Ah, this isn't the time for this. The manager tapped his forehead and placed the menu on the table. Please order anything you want. Grandfather said that it's free for Sir Raon for the rest of his life. Ha! Then, what about me? Dorian pointed at himself with his finger. Sir Dorian needs to pay, of course. Yua put her hands on her waist, raising her chin. Wow, are you discriminating right now? How many sales do you think I made for you? He. Dorian, Yua, and the manager burst into laughter. Whatever is fine, so make the order already. The King of Essence wants the apple meat pie for now. Wrath came out of the bracelet, rolling his eyes. Then. Raon ordered the apple meat pie that Wrath wanted, then a stew, a grilled duck, and a cheese pizza. Please wait a moment. We will bring you the best meal. 15 minutes later, food that was made more earnestly than ever filled the table. It had a great fragrance, but the quantity was also a lot more than usual. They looked particularly great today. Raise your weapon already. Listening to the exploding sound of Wrath's salivary glands, Raon picked up his spoon. He is such a troublesome demon king. Since he hadn't had a proper meal in a while, it seemed even more delicious. It wasn't just Wrath. Raon was also smiling in satisfaction. Thank you for the meal. Sir Raon. As Raon was about to return after paying, the manager raised his hand. You mentioned you had something to tell me about Yua. May I hear what that was? Raon was looking for an opportunity to tell him, so he was glad he asked. Do you already know who tried to kidnap Yua? It was Eden, right? Although, I'm not sure why they did that. The reason Eden is targeting Yua is simple. Raon continued, looking at Yua, who was standing next to the manager with trembling hands. It's because they wanted her to wear the siren's mask. Siren's mask? A siren is a mermaid monster that is half human and half fish. It has the ability to charm people by singing and playing instruments. Singing and playing instruments? No way. The manager's eyes widened as he realized what he meant. Yua is talented with music, to a point where even I recognize it when I know nothing other than swinging a sword. Eden was targeting that talent and tried turning Yua into a siren. Ah. The manager's expression grew stiff as Raon continued. As long as Yua stays in Haben Castle, they will keep targeting her by using various methods. They are insane, after all. I see. The manager slowly turned his head to look at Yua. It appeared that he had somewhat expected that to happen. Since Eden's actions will get more and more violent in the future, they might put other people in danger on top of Yua next time. That's why I wanted to suggest that you come with me when I return to my house. That we'd go to Sieghart with you? Yes, because we shouldn't separate the two of you. Raon immediately nodded. Since Sieghart was antagonizing the 5 demons, they would certainly accept them if he explained the circumstances to them. Sir Raon. The manager looked at him while softly pressing on the counter. This question might sound weird, but may I ask why you are being so kind to us? That's... Raon's eyes returned to the past upon hearing the manager's question. He'd lived as an assassin, a hunting dog for his entire life after getting kidnapped in the childhood that he couldn't even remember properly. Infiltration, murder, invasion, theft, manipulation of information, and more. He didn't want to do any of them, yet he kept completing Darius' orders as they resonated in his head. If Yua were to wear the siren's mask, her life would become even more brutal than his previous life had been. It was a given that she would shed blood every day with her own hands, for the rest of her life. Because he'd personally experienced that hell, he didn't want a normal kid that liked to sing and cook to shed other people's blood. That was all there was to it. Because I have to do it. Raon gave a slightly awkward smile, hiding his feelings. I see. It looked like the manager liked that answer, smiling gently as he looked at Yua. Sir Raon. Yua raised her hand to ask a question. Can I become stronger like Sir Raon? Will I be able to protect grandfather and beat up the bad guys? Since it was a completely unexpected situation, Raon's eyes widened. I was mistaken. He was only thinking about bringing Yua with him to protect her, but she actually wanted to get stronger herself. It looked like she wanted to forget the terrifying scene of her family being devoured by a monster, to move on. That girl's talent is the real deal. Even though it's different from swordsmanship, releasing the talent would make her stronger. Wrath was right. She had the talent, and she desired to fight. It was only right for him to show her the path, just like Rimmer did for him. Of course. I also used to be a coward before coming to Sieghart. Dorian interrupted before Raon responded. But you are still a coward. Raon snickered, putting his hand on Dorian's shoulder. I am not a coward. I just have a slight hand tremor. He is the most cowardliest of the cowards. Wrath clicked his tongue. Do you want to protect yourself and your grandfather with your own power? Raon leaned forward to meet Yua's gaze. Yes. You should be able to if you desire it. I'll go then. Yua gave a refreshing smile and clenched her fist. Since she wants to go, I can't stop her. I think I can trust anything Sir Raon says. Please take care of her in the future. You don't need to do this. The manager was trying to kneel and bow, and Raon stopped him in a haste. But if you are sending Yua, I'm not going. What? Grandfather. Yua ran up to him and grabbed his sleeve. What are you talking about? We have to go together. I've lived here for my entire life. I'm not going anywhere. The same goes for me. If I were to leave, that would be the end of this pub. I don't even have a long life in front of me. I just want you to live on happily. The manager smiled faintly. It looked like he already made up his mind. Then I'm not going either. Why would you not? You keep complaining every day that it's cold and narrow. Regardless of how great it is, I'm not going if it's not with my grandfather. Their voices got louder as they grabbed onto each other's clothes. Let's go. Leaving the arguing people behind, Raon left the pub. Can we leave them like that? Yes. He nodded, taking a glance at the branch of frost, where loud voices were still coming from. It's up to them to decide. Slightly past the dinner time, Raon returned to the scouts' quarters and changed. It was the opposite from his usual routine, where he trained until it was late at night. You've finally gone insane. Wrath poked his head out of the bracelet, snickering. That's not the case. Raon laid on the bed and shook his head. What? I need to check how effective sloth, which increases the stats just from sleeping, is. Sloth, which he had obtained from the monarch of the same name, was an ability that would make him stronger while he slept. I need to know how many stats I get before planning for the fight against the commander in 4 months. A fight against a master-level warrior was a golden opportunity for him. He had no intention of wasting it like an idiot. He needed to confront him in his best condition and state, so he first needed to properly test the ability he'd obtained. Let's see how much stronger I get by sleeping. Raon smiled in excitement and covered himself with a blanket. Chapter 148. As soon as the darkness started to fade, Raon opened his eyes. Since he'd always woken up at that hour, he didn't even consider sleeping longer. However, one thing was different from usual. It was the message that appeared in front of his eyes. All stats have increased slightly with Sloth's effect. It was a pleasant message, announcing an increase in stats. I can certainly feel it. Probably because his senses were sharper, he could feel that his physical abilities had been enhanced, although it was by a small amount. The increase was similar to when he trained to the best of his abilities. Obviously, it wasn't equal to a full point, it was only a fraction, but the amazing part was that he got all those stats just from sleeping. He wasn't a demon king for nothing. When he heard why Sloth became a demon king from wrath, he doubted that it was even possible. However, it seemed that it was thanks to that ability. A trait that made him stronger as he slept was such a ridiculous ability. Moreover, Raon raised himself up and tried to turn his shoulders and ankles. My body feels light. He felt as light as a feather, without any signs of exhaustion. Although it wasn't mentioned, Sloth also seemed to allow a deep sleep. Creak. Rat started gritting his teeth as soon as he came out of the bracelet. It looked like he was dissatisfied with everything. That stupid sleepyhead. He gave you too much power. Is this too much? Of course it is. Even though it's less than what you'd get while training, it's significant enough for you to feel it. Wrath kept swearing, saying that Sloth must be crazy for sure. How could he give that crazy ability to a guy that already gets stronger at a monstrous pace? The King of Essence will make sure he never sleeps again if I meet him in Devildom. Raon licked his lips. Now that I think about it, I feel slightly bad for both of them. Wrath was watching the whole scene as he got played, and Sloth was tricked without knowing anything. Raon felt bad for the two demon kings, although it was just a little bit. Why you feel bad? It's you who did all that. How can you say that you feel bad for us? You damn devil. Devil, huh? He was probably the first person to be called a devil by the King of Demons. Raon could only smile. But this ability isn't perfect. Wait, does it have a weakness? Wrath's eyes widened upon hearing that it had a weakness. Yes. Now I want to sleep longer. Probably because of Sloth's effect, the unusual desire of staying in bed was welling up inside him. Ha! But you woke up immediately. I have a strong willpower. It's pointless against me. Then it doesn't work against you. Are you kidding with the King of Essence again? Wrath bit his lip and started blowing a cold wind upon realizing that he had been tricked. Calm down. That is, if you don't want to give more stats the first thing in the morning. Ugh. Wrath made a strange groan and stopped. It looked like giving Raon stats was the last thing he wanted to do, even though he was angry. Ah. Raon snickered before looking at the black flower bracelet around his wrist. You said Sloth's soul was inside this bracelet, right? When did the King of Essence ever say such a thing? You told me yesterday that I took Sloth's soul. Weren't you talking about this? Wrath opened his mouth like an idiot. Raon has been with him for a long time, but it was his first time witnessing such a stupid expression. And maybe? I don't think so. He did his best to turn around and hide his expression, but it was no good. The fact that he was awkwardly changing the subject because he couldn't lie didn't help either. I knew it. I don't know what this is, but it does contain Sloth's soul. You are so pointlessly sharp. Wrath clenched his fist and turned his head. He glared at Raon with a threatening gaze. That damn bastard took a liking to your underhanded nature and gave you an item imbued with his soul. What an idiot. I see. Raon nodded, swaying the two flower bracelets. I knew I should properly listen to what you say. Wrath didn't only give stats, but also disclosed a bunch of hints and information with his own mouth. He reminded him of the bottom part of the tree that became people's resting place after death. So, what ability does this have? I don't know. What? I really don't know. What's in there isn't sloth, it's just a portion of his soul. Which means the ability will be determined depending on your actions in the future. And? Humph. Figure out the rest by yourself. Wrath snorted and turned around. Judging from his expression, he wasn't going to say anything for a while. That's enough. Raon smiled in satisfaction. An item imbued with Sloth's soul was bound to become something extraordinary, so he just needed to wait patiently. I'll give you one piece of advice. Wrath turned back. There was a deadly glare in his blue eyes. If you had met pride, envy, or greed, you would have never managed to survive against them. If you met lust, then not even your bones would have remained, and if gluttony was there, then you would have been Devu. Aren't you gluttony? Just listen to me. He couldn't maintain his serious appearance, growing irritated once again. Anyway, consider it your once-in-a-lifetime luck that you met stupid Sloth. Raon wanted to tell him that his real luck was meeting the doormat called Wrath, but he suppressed his urge because that would make him start rampaging around. You won't get another chance like this. Raon licked his lips, looking at Wrath as he floated in the air. Looking at Wrath, who'd become smaller from using all his power the other day. Mysteriously, and very mysteriously at that, he could smell the doormat from the Demon King's names. Actually, I'd like to meet them soon. In order to get used to the recent stiff increase in stats, Raon went to the training ground. He warmed himself up lightly before swinging his sword vertically. The blade aggressively pierced through the air, leaving an evident mark on the ground. The wind billowed around him even though he wasn't even using his aura. It was the result of his strength, agility, and delicate senses. Thud. He stomped the ground and raised his blade at shoulder's height. The soft flow of the star-connecting sword followed the horizon, and the wavering strike severed through the cold darkness of daybreak. The moment Raon turned his ankle slightly, the flow changed suddenly. The tranquil, endlessly flowing river started cresting like a tidal wave. The fangs of insanity. The fierce blade crushed the space like a starving beast, creating a crimson scar. Ha! Raon exhaled heavily and lowered his blade. This is better than I thought. The increased stats were more effective than he thought. It seemed he needed to spend a lot of time working to perfectly control his enhanced physical abilities. But it's nice that I can see how I can get stronger. In his previous life, he couldn't picture himself getting stronger at all. It felt like he was walking in darkness on his own, yet it was different now. Even though it should have taken a long time, he could see how to get stronger, which was making his heart pound. I should try using that. Raon raised his sword once again and used the 10,000 flames cultivation to the maximum. The heat rising on his shoulder made the ground, which was covered by perpetual snow, boil like magma. Whir! The crimson flame that ignited was like a snake's tongue on the blade, white as a snowfield. The flame, which was extensive enough to cover the entire blade, was dancing in the air and gathering into the shape of a dragon. Once two horns appeared from its head, Raon kicked the ground and thrust his sword. Roar! The dragon roar resounded from the center of the training grounds. Zighart! The Lord's Manor! My lord! Rimmer violently opened the huge door, as if he were trying to destroy it, and entered the audience chamber. Seriously, that guy needs to be locked up somewhere. Glenn frowned, looking at Rimmer's refreshing steps. He will probably dig a tunnel to escape if he gets locked up. Ren shook his head with a gentle smile. My lord! Did you see this? Rimmer shook the letter in his hand, a refreshing smile on his face. That's... Glenn narrowed his eyes, recognizing the waxed seal on the letter. Why is there a report from Haben Castle in your hand right now? I took it when they were coming to report. Rimmer laughed, as if he were bragging about it. You really are insane. People said that students took after their teachers. What Glenn said to Rimmer was the same thing that Wrath always told Raon. Ren, confine him in a cave immediately. Cover the floor and the ceiling with an iron plate, and never let him escape. Eek. Why are you doing this to me? Rimmer quickly shook his head, waving the letter. I ran here as fast as I could to deliver Raon's news to the head of house. I'll be sad if that's the treatment I get. You did that because you wanted to know about it, not for me. Well, that's part of the reason. I mean, I'm bound to have expectations since I get surprised each time I get a report. The other trainees were also doing great in their respective positions, but no one was a match for Raon's achievements. He could tell how much of a difference Raon was making compared to the others just from the reports. Then I'll open it right now. Wait. Glenn flicked his finger. The letter in Rimmer's hand started floating spontaneously and flew into Glenn's hand. Are you even using a formless aura just to take away the letter? Rimmer gasped at the absurdity of his actions, but Glenn didn't even look at him as he unsealed the letter. You are even using the ultimate technique just so that you can read the letter about your grandson before me. What he'd used just then wasn't a simple aura, it was the formless aura that was only possible to use after reaching the supreme level. Rimmer never thought that he'd use such a thing just to take away a letter. The corners of Glenn's mouth swayed like a fishhook as he read down the letter. What could the contents be for him to react like that? I'm not sure. I haven't seen him that happy for a long time. Glenn's expression didn't change that much, but the two people could tell that he was extremely pleased. Nothing special happened. Glenn murmured that it was a trivial matter and threw the letter away. It landed at Rimmer's feet as if it were the most natural thing to happen. It felt like he was telling him to read it already. Let's check for now. Rimmer and Ren nodded, reading the letter at the same time. It was written that Raon had saved Haben Castle once again, becoming a hero. It also said that everyone at Haben Castle had decided to support him. Gasp! Wow! They exclaimed, unable to take their eyes off the letter. He is really amazing. Rimmer was standing in front of Glenn with his jaw dropped. I can understand that he saved everyone, but how could that picky old man Milan decide to support him? This is a great achievement. It's nothing special. Unlike Rimmer, who was making a fuss, Glenn nonchalantly shook his head. However, he couldn't stop his mouth from twitching. How can you say that it's nothing special? Rimmer continued with a serious face. Haben Castle is the land of warriors. They are faithful to each other, they have steadfast convictions, and their might is outstanding. Obtaining the hearts of people like that will be greatly helpful to Raon in the future. I agree with him. Haben Castle is an honorable place. I'm sure they will come to help Raon no matter what he does, no matter where he is. We won't know until it happens. Despite his brusque manner, the corners of Glenn's lips kept wavering non-stop. It looked like he couldn't suppress his smile because of the unexpected report. Pfft, stop suppressing it and just smile already. Rimmer stretched his own mouth. Why are you even using the formless aura just to hear the grandson's news before anyone else? And then you're forcing your muscles to stop your mouth from curving into a smile? You just need to show 10% of your love for Raon to hug you while calling you Grandpa. Seriously, you are the fussiest person in Zeghard ever, gasp. Before he could finish his sentence, Rimmer screamed and leaped away. Wham! The floor where he used to be standing was scorched black and had collapsed. The lightning? Are you seriously trying to kill me? Rimmer swallowed harshly, mouth dry, while looking at the floor. That's not a bad idea. Glenn slowly raised himself. His cheeks were slightly red, as he was a bit embarrassed from Rimmer's statement hitting the mark. Wait a moment. Making me die on a day like this, where my student and my lord's grandson got a great achievement, would be a bad omen. Making a sacrifice will be a good omen. As sacrifice? Me? A lightning powerful enough to scorch the world sparked from Glenn's long finger. As that light was about to rage towards him, Rimmer grit his teeth and gathered his hands. I'm not dying like this. Swordfield creation. Glenn flinched upon hearing that majestic voice, and Rimmer used that opportunity to leap and open the audience chamber's door. You know you can't tell anyone about this, right? I'll return later. See you. Ha! When Rimmer was about to escape with a bluff, his eyes widened. His feet weren't reaching the ground. Glenn's aura had caught him already, and his body was floating in the air. And my lord is the greatest head of house in Sieghart's history. Please forgive me. Ren, we need a hole. Rimmer kept begging like a fly, but Glenn's eyes only became colder. We are going to bury him today. No. A yellow lightning struck inside the Sieghart's audience chamber. Raon exhaled extremely slowly, to the point where it felt boring, before opening his eyes. Seriousness and purity were creating a harmony inside his solemn red eyes. It's perfect. He finished getting used to his body, which kept getting stronger over the past 4 months, and he also managed to increase his proficiency with the new skills he'd obtained. His objective of achieving peak condition in 4 months had been completed. I can have a satisfying fight now. He didn't think he would be able to win against Milland, but it didn't feel like he would face a disgraceful defeat. As Raon finished organizing his thoughts and stood up, Dorian opened the door to the scouts' quarters and entered. Young master, the time has come. He swallowed hard, his eyes filled with worries and anticipation. The commander is already outside, waiting for you. All right. It was the day of spar against Commander Milland, which he'd promised Raon 4 months ago. He was glad that he could face his final opportunity in Haben Castle in peak condition. Let's go. Raon picked up the sword hanging at the wall and left their quarters. Sir Raon. Please win. You gotta defeat the commander before leaving. I believe in you. Raon nodded at the soldiers rooting for him and entered the training ground. The exterior was completely filled with knights, swordsmen, and soldiers, to a point where there was no space to set foot in. Have you finished your preparations? Milland was standing in the center of the training grounds, looking at him indifferently. I'm perfectly prepared, thank you for waiting. Raon smiled and bowed. That's a relief. It won't be boring, at least. Milland threw away the thick coat he'd been wearing. Stomping heavily on the ground, he placed his hand on the hilt of his sword. Then there's no reason to delay. Come at me. The pressure that used to be soft like a spring wind suddenly transformed into a powerful wave, like a storm. Milland's aura, accumulated in battlefields throughout dozens of years, started to put pressure Raon's body. Whir! Raon grasped his trembling hands, resonating the ring of fire. He increased the level of his soul and pulled out the 10,000 flames cultivation. Thud! Thud! He kicked the ground with enough power to collapse the ground, leaping into Milland's space. Starting with the fangs of insanity, the fang of a crazed beast thundered into him. Bomb! Speed, power, and direction. The strike wasn't lacking in any of those aspects, yet Milland snapped the fangs of insanity's teeth by simply raising his sword. The space was completely blocked, but Raon's eyes didn't change. The fangs of insanity was an intuition sword, which pierced into the enemy's opening, that meant he was only getting started. Clang! Clang! Silver light spread from Raon and Milland's hands, colliding with each other countless times. A powerful shockwave smashed the ground apart, and a fierce wave burst into the space between them, but Milland wasn't pushed back at all. He was the picture of an Iron Man. You have good strength and speed, but the sharpness is lacking. Is that all? Milland's voice was sinking into coldness, as if he were looking down at the earth from the heavens. Of course not. A crimson flame passed by Raon's eyes. The flower on the sword's point came into a full bloom like starlight. I'm only getting started. Chapter 149. Raon stomped the ground. He connected the force coming up from his ankle to his waist and wrist. The flame on his blade twisted in a spiral, aimed towards Milland's chest. Things are finally getting interesting. Milland bared his teeth and turned his wrist. A wave as violent as the northern winds severed the ground. Slum. The blades that were imbued with tremendous power collided with each other, creating a thunderous noise akin to a collapsing mountain. Your strength alone is at a master's level. The wave of energy coming from Milland grew stronger. That was because he didn't raise his sword for defense, he was trying to attack, which was blocked. There should be more than strength to it. Holding out against Milland's attacks, which got more and more powerful, Raon smiled. He made use of his enhanced strength and agility to the best of their abilities in order to withstand Milland's pressure. Clang! He deflected the heavy blow that was directed at his neck and moved forward. Milland's technique was specialized for battles. Since he'd been fighting monsters for his entire life and building up his swordsmanship on the battlefield, it was powerful enough to destroy the heavens. And yet, the motion was large. That weakness was what Raon needed to aim for. A petty trick won't work. Trying to cut through the 10,000 Flames cultivation's aura itself, Milland condensed a tremendous amount of aura on his blade. Thick threads appeared along his silver blade. That's... A chill ran down his spine as he witnessed the gathering energy. It wasn't a master's characteristic astral energy, but a comparable amount of energy was being condensed. The attack seemed powerful enough to destroy steel. Don't die. Milland's footwork crushed the ground. He wasn't fast, but he was dominating the space like a herd of buffalo and didn't leave much space to dodge. What shall I do? Going head-to-head against such an aura wasn't a good idea. The correct choice would have been running away first, then looking for an opportunity later, but Raon didn't withdraw. There's no reason for me to be here if I run away. He had the rare opportunity to fight against Milland, who used powerful techniques. He couldn't miss a chance like that. Rumble! The moment the sword was about to fall on his head with tremendous energy, Raon resonated his 5 rings of fire. He read the flow of Milland's power with his slowed vision. Huff! He thrust his sword, aiming at the opening at Milland's waist. The blade, imbued with the fangs of insanity's principles, showed its fangs. That won't work. Milland wasn't shaken, despite the critical situation. He instantly removed the opening at his waist, regaining a perfect posture to pressure him again. Just as I thought. Thinking ability, reaction, and physical abilities increased exponentially upon reaching master's level. There was no way he would be caught off guard by an attack like that, as he became a master a long time ago. That's why. A deadly light shone in Raon's eyes. I threw a bait. The moment his sword was about to collide against Milland's mighty power, Raon twisted the aura on his blade. Cling! Along with the sound of crushing steel, the trajectory of Milland's sword became distorted. It was one of Fangs of Insanity's techniques, discharge. It was originally a technique that involved smashing a rotating aura into the enemy's body, but it had become a perfect defensive move. As Milland's sword bounced away, Raon didn't miss the opportunity and thrust his sword. The still rotating blade was thrust towards Milland's chest. Impressive! Milland smiled and focused his aura in his left hand. The blue aura compressed into a sphere, bouncing off the blade. He could improvise such a move in that short instant. That was indeed the ability of a warrior that had spent his entire life on the battlefield. Rumble! Milland drew a half circle with his wrist, and his sword pierced towards the sky. The blade that fell towards him after that was as heavy as the battlefield. Raon felt like his skin was falling apart under the tremendous pressure. I haven't even gotten started yet. Raon smiled in a similar manner, advancing towards the falling blade. I lose if I fall back. Running away or withdrawing from his battle techniques would only result in more pressure. Avoiding fighting back with power was alright, but withdrawing was the last thing he could do. Although he entered the focus state, it was difficult to read the flow of the vibrating blade, which contained a huge amount of power. What he needed to do in a case like that was predict. Imagining in his head all of the Milland's moves that Raon had witnessed from standing behind him so far, he hacked diagonally. Slum! Milland's attack was blocked before it reached the peak. He managed to guess the right direction because of his experience. Deflecting the bone-shattering force, Raon smacked Milland's solar plexus with his left elbow. You are good at surprise attacks. You are even better suited to a battlefield than me. He blocked the attack with his left hand, as if he knew it was coming. He was indeed a difficult opponent. And that was why Raon smiled. Are you having fun? I'm getting excited. Raon smiled faintly. The flame dancing on his blade fluttered like a flower blossom alongside his smile. Every single one of them was a powerful aura blade. Even Milland couldn't easily deal with them, and used aura to explode them midway. Boom! The training ground shook, and a sandstorm mixed with flame and aura was created. As if they'd agreed upon it beforehand, Raon and Milland rushed into it for relentless assaults. Rumble! The red and blue light endlessly clashed against each other inside the gray dust that scattered around them. Tyrion swallowed harshly, mouth dry. It's crazy. He knew that Raon was stronger than his current level, but he didn't think he would be able to fight like that against his father. His level should have been similar to mine. An advanced or highest grade expert, that should have been his level, but Raon's prowess was on another level when compared to his own. Honestly, his physical abilities seemed to surpass even his father's. How can he be that strong? Even if he considered the fact that he was Sieghart's bloodline, it was an unreasonable power. He couldn't even be jealous about it. His skills increase quickly, but the quality is also on another level. Witnessing the fight at another level, Beto's jaw dropped. I'm sure he was weaker than me when he first arrived. I don't understand how he got that strong. This is ridiculous. He shook his head at the mysterious sight. Even though he'd seen countless powerhouses and geniuses as a mercenary captain, Raon was still a mystery. That's because he doesn't withdraw. A low voice could be heard from behind them. Edquil, who'd been watching Raon's back for a while, was standing there. What do you mean, he doesn't withdraw? He never withdraws, whether it's in front of monsters, powerful people, or the flow of nature. He keeps stepping ahead, even if his life is at risk. He bit his lip, watching Raon's intense fight against Milland. He clasped his fist in excitement. The fortitude of swinging his sword in any situation is making him stronger. Certainly. Tyrion slowly nodded. He was right. Raon never withdrew, no matter what situation he was in. The fact that an almost 17-year-old boy could have such a resolution was more mysterious than his prowess alone. It seems like our decision to stand behind him was the best choice we've ever made. The officers around him nodded upon hearing his calm yet powerful voice. Wham! Along with the thunderous, sky-shattering noise, the sandstorm exploded. Raon was violently pushed back, but Milland was standing in the spot, barely moving back. Tisk! Raon briefly clicked his tongue. He wasn't losing that much in terms of physical abilities and aura, but he couldn't catch up to Milland's endurance and durability. Do you think it's strange? Milland smiled, swirling his sword. I had the same feeling before, but you really don't get tired. He never looked exhausted despite continuously using aura blades and astral blades on the battlefield. It couldn't be because of the amount of aura he had, but because of his level. This is the reason. Milland pointed at his body, slightly above his abdomen. The middle energy center. It opens up upon reaching the master level, allowing you to control a larger amount of powerful energy with a smaller amount of aura. Middle energy center. Your prowess surpasses an expert, but you haven't reached master's level yet. You can't win against me in a long fight. He already knew about the middle energy center's effect, but it was his first time witnessing it in use. Raon smiled unconsciously. Why are you smiling? Because I can see how I should proceed. Raon's desire to become a master grew even further upon witnessing the middle energy center's ability. He was confident that he could make an explosive use of the middle energy center, as he had enough stats. Interesting. Milland's eyes remained indifferent. However, his blade was surrounded by a fierce aura, completely different from his eyes. Show me your full power. Raon nodded and brandished his sword. He resonated the rings of fire to the brim, spreading glacier around. Whir! He took out all the remaining energy of the 10,000 flames cultivation from his energy center. The bloody flames surrounded his sword and body, to create a mysterious shape. The thong made of sword to the horns connecting to his back looked like a dragon. The wave created by the tremendous amount of aura distorted the entire training ground. What's the name of this technique? Milland asked, raising his radiant blade. Its name is Flame Dragon Art. Raon brandished his sword above his shoulder, extending his left hand. It looked like a dragon watching its prey, its mouth closed. Interesting. This technique's name is Frost Dragon Slash. It's said to have slain the ice dragon living at the top of Stalin Mountain 1,000 years ago. The energy gathered in Milan's blade was deadly sharp. It was dense enough to distort his vision. Come at me. Let's see whether your dragon or my sword is going to win. As soon as he gestured his hand, Raon pulled back his leg. He exploded his aura, compressed to the extreme, to kick off from the ground. Whir! The aura blade blazing through the space fell vertically. It was powerful enough to cut Milan's body in half if he failed to stop it. A crimson spark appeared in Raon's eyes. He exploded the aura gathered at the sword's extremity at once. The blade's advance, engulfed by the flame, looked like a red dragon's breath. Creak! The blue and red lights glimmered, and the aura stormed up to the sky. Alongside the sound of shattering metal, the storm subsided and the training ground was revealed once again. Raon and Milan were standing on the devastated ground, as if it went through a magic bombardment. Milan's blade was brimming with a perfectly materialized aura, but Raon's sword was snapped into half, its blade stuck in the ground. I lost. Raon carefully picked up the broken blade. Thank you for your lesson. He nonchalantly bowed at him. Whoa! The commander has won. It's only natural, why are you so happy about that? Commander! Sir Raon! You did great. You almost fought equally. Raon! 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 The soldiers cheered for the victor and comforted the loser. However, Milan was frowning despite having won the fight, and Raon was smiling. It looked like their reactions were reversed. Oh my! Milan scattered the shining aura from his blade and laughed bitterly. I didn't think you'd force me to use an astral blade. A transcendental body, judgment, and aura were obtained upon reaching the master level. He thought he didn't need to use astral energy to teach him, but that was his miscalculation. He would have been devoured by Raon's last technique if he didn't use the astral energy. What are you even trying to achieve by getting stronger so quickly? I have much to do. Raon smiled faintly, looking at his broken blade. Haben Castle allowed him to achieve an impossibly quick growth. And that man was the foundation of his growth. Darius Robert. I haven't forgotten about you yet. I'm not going to stop until I behead you. Deep inside his red eyes, where no one could see, his anger was boiling. The Lord's manner of Robert was extravagant in a different way than Sieghart's. Sitting in the office located on the highest floor, which was best described as majestic, Darius Robert was listening to his head butler's report. There are a few particularities other than that, but that's it for the overall report. Particularities? Darius tilted his head slightly, his gaze gentle. It's not anything significant. There are many cases of the activities of young swordsmen in the north, which appear to be the training for Sieghart's swordsmen. They must be trying to increase the skills of their swordsmen by making them participate in real battles. It's effective for sure. Haben Castle was saved by the young sword demon Raon. Raon? As soon as he mentioned the name Raon, Darius's eyes changed completely. The easygoing atmosphere, like the spring wind, turned into the cold air of an ice cave. It's not that Raon. He is a blonde-haired and red-eyed swordsman. He is a young boy that has inherited Glenn Sieghart's blood for sure. Ah, of course. Darius snickered, and looked at the back of his hand. A drop of blood trickled from the scar that still hadn't disappeared. I'm just a bit annoyed by this scar that never disappears. He wiped the blood flowing from the scar and frowned. Speaking of Haben Castle, the young swordsman that stopped Eden's attack must be Raon. Darius's voice sounded extremely irritated. You are properly remembering it, even though I just mentioned it on the side. The butler nodded. It's him. However, the rumors are bound to be exaggerated, so you don't need to pay attention to him. Rumors are usually exaggerated, but sometimes understated. Pardon? If all goes according to plan, we are going to clash against Sieghart as well. It'd be a good idea to renew the information about Sieghart as a whole, on top of that boy. Darius stroked his neat chin. He tapped on his desk with emotionless eyes, just like when he beheaded Raon. Send the shadows to the north to gather every piece of information about Sieghart. Raon picked up the backpack under his bed, pulling it onto his shoulders. Before leaving the scouts' quarters, he turned to look around the room. It was a small room that he'd been living in for just 1 year and 1 month, but it felt like he'd been living there for years. Stop reminiscing like a country bumpkin and leave already. Demon King should learn to read the atmosphere. After looking around the small yet comfortable lodging for a last time, he went outside. I'll carry that one. Dorian, who'd been waiting at the entrance, waved his hand. Saying that he would carry the backpack, he put it inside his belly pocket. I'm ready, too. Yua stepped out from behind Dorian. She was wearing a white woolen robe. She looked like a white rabbit with her hat over her head. Did you pack all of your baggage? Yes, Sir Dorian has it now. Yua smiled cheerfully, pointing at Dorian. She's grown brighter. In the end, the manager decided to stay behind, with Yua being the only person leaving. Probably because she had braced herself already, she didn't look sad at all. Let's go. Raon patted Yua's shoulder and left the scouts' quarters. The swordsmen, knights, and soldiers were lined up on the sides, creating a road up to the castle gates. Be careful on your way back. Don't forget about us. We will remember you for the rest of our lives. Call us anytime you need help. With each step he took, the fellows that fought with him back-to-back said their goodbyes. Treasuring every single one of their words, Raon headed towards the castle gates. The castle gates that were firmly shut when he first arrived were now wide open, and Milan, Tarion, and the officers were lined up in front of them. Tarion and Beto were smiling, and the scout leaders, including Raiden, looked bitter, while Milan and Edquil looked calm. I should be going now. Be careful on your way. That was enough of a goodbye for Raon and Milan. That was because the conversation of swords that they had a few months ago still remained in their hearts. Raon said goodbye to the officers one by one, and then it was Edquil's turn in the end. Do you still want to follow me instead of standing behind me? Of course. Edquil nodded, not hesitating at all. Then please get stronger. Raon looked into Edquil's unwavering eyes and continued. I have much that I need to do. If you want to walk alongside me, you have to become stronger than anyone here. In terms of sword and mind alike. Very well. Edquil was at a completely different level than before. The way he responded, without asking any questions, felt reliable. Always remember that we, Haben Castle, are behind you. Yes. Listening to Milan's indifferent yet powerful voice, Raon met everyone's eyes. Thank you for everything. Raon smiled, looking at the people that made up Haben Castle. Please stay healthy until we meet again. With those as his last words, he turned around. He grabbed Yua's shoulder as her eyes welled up with tears while looking at the manager, then he left through the wide-open castle gates to pray for his fortune in war. Goodbye. Sir Raon. Good luck. Goodbye, Raon. We are the ones that should thank you. Take care, Yua. Along with the sound of the gates closing, he could hear the people shouting. Grandfather. Goodbye. See you later, later. Unlike Yua and Dorian, who were saying their goodbye, Raon didn't look back. He kept walking forward in anticipation for the day they would meet again. Once the soldiers' voices couldn't be heard anymore, the endless hill that they'd struggled on while on their way to Haben Castle appeared. Yua, I'll carry you on my back here. You don't need to. As he was about to carry Yua on his back, Dorian snorted and stepped up. He put his hand deep into his belly pocket and took out a wooden sledge. It was big enough for more than 3 people to ride. What the hell is that? Why the hell was that inside his pocket? Wrath exclaimed, although he'd been remaining silent in his laziness. A sledge? Why do you have this? Raon and Yua dropped their jaws upon seeing the sledge. What? Of course I'd have a sledge when we are crossing such a place. Dorian tilted his head, as if it was a strange question to ask. We can even control the speed, since it's a high-quality sledge. Get on. He was wondering why a coward was carrying a sledge around, but apparently he could adjust the speed. Wow! Yua raised her hands and jumped around in excitement. Am I the strange one now? Raon shrugged his shoulders and sat on the sledge with Yua. Then, let's go. Listening to Dorian's cheerful voice, Raon nodded. It was time to go. Chapter 150. Sieghart's fifth training ground. The sand court of Sweat and Blood had been empty for a year, but it grew crowded once more with the returning trainees. The trainees, who had become 17-year-olds, were more than one span taller than before. They looked more mature, and their postures were brimming with confidence and pride. And the best part was their eyes. They reflected the accomplishments they'd achieved with their own strength, emanating a pressure on a different level from before. However, the trainees' complexions weren't that great, even though they were guaranteed to obtain their swordsman license after passing the year-long survival exam and obtaining the instructor's recognition. They looked like they were unsatisfied about something as they frowned. In particular, Bayan, Runan, and Martha's faces were more wrinkled than the others. That bastard! Why has he still not returned? Bayan, who had grown sturdier rather than bulky, was frowning so hard that his already low eyebrows were touching his eyes. What the hell is he even doing for him to not show himself until the day before graduation? He nervously bit his nails and kept running around the training ground. Raon! Runan, whose silver hair was tied back, blankly looked up to the clear sky and murmured Raon's name. Her voice was so small that it didn't even reach right next to her, but that made it even more scary. Why is Raon not coming? Where is Raon? We need to eat ice cream together. Watching her blankly walk around the training ground was giving others goosebumps. Humph, he probably got beaten up from acting up too much just because he got a little stronger. That must be why he's still not here. Martha now looked like a real woman, her ebony hair contrasting with her white skin. She snorted, but her eyes were rolling in anxiety at the same time. It's actually better if he doesn't return. I can just represent us instead of that small guy. Her mouth was scornfully rolled up, but her slightly trembling lips showed that she was forcing herself. That frustrating bastard, why the hell is he not coming? She murmured in a low voice that no one could hear, clenching her fist. Raon will return. As Martha awkwardly smiled, Runan walked up to her and pouted. Her blank eyes were reflecting trust. What? Raon will return. He would have been here already if that was the case. It's too late already. Martha turned her chin. She didn't say anything harsher, since she didn't want it to come true. I'm sure he is hiding somewhere because he is too ashamed of losing. He didn't lose. He will return soon. He won't. He won't. He will. He won't. He will. Silver hair and black hair. As two people with contrasting hair colors growled at each other, dark green sparks started blasting around them. The trainees inside the training ground didn't try to stop them. That was because their conflict had lasted for almost a month. Why are Raon and Dorian not back yet? Maybe they got in an accident on their way back. They could have met Eden. Stop saying such an awful thing. The trainees kept worrying about Raon while training or conversing. They were completely different from when they laughed at him after meeting him for the first time. Although 1 year had passed, they were still following Raon from the bottom of their hearts after he'd saved their lives. Slam! As they were unable to focus and were awkwardly swinging their swords, the training ground's door burst open and Rimmer entered, fluttering his fiery red hair. The wind he created felt even more relaxed than before as he stood in front of the trainees. What is with those unfocused eyes? Did you not sleep yesterday? Rimmer looked around at the trainees with his characteristic frivolous eyes. Instructor, you shouldn't open the door with your feet. The door is mine. Try arguing again. He wagged his finger towards Bayan, who frowned. Ugh. Since he wasn't exactly wrong, Bayan could only grit his teeth. Their relationship hadn't changed at all, even after a year. Tomorrow is the graduation ceremony. All the higher-ups in the house are going to come to see you. Are you planning to look like idiots in front of them? Wake up already. Rimmer clicked his tongue, looking at the trainees that were unable to focus. Raon isn't coming. Runan sighed heavily, looking at the beat ice cream box in her hand with her shoulders drooped. Just as you said, tomorrow is the graduation ceremony. So why the hell is Raon still not here? Did he really get kidnapped or something? Bayan looked like he was about to bite the platform as he frowned. His blue eyes were filled with worry. That's it if he doesn't return. Why do you keep looking for him? I feel comfortable without him around. Martha laughed coldly with her arms crossed, although her hand hidden in her armpit was trembling. Ha, how foolish. Rimmer shook his head. Do you still not know anything about Raon after spending years with him? Do you think he is the type of guy who'd get beaten up or kidnapped? No matter how strong Raon is, he is just strong among us. No, stop looking at me like that because I'm not particularly worried about him. Raon and Dorian are just from the same training ground as me. Bun blushed, embarrassed by the mere fact that he was thinking about Raon. Strong for his age, huh? Rimmer smiled playfully and shrugged. Huh? You look like you know something. Instructor. You know where Raon is, right? Why is he not coming back? Is Dorian with him? Instructor. The trainees rushed at Rimmer like a swarm of ants rushing towards Candy. Runan was among them, the ice cream box in her hand. She looked like she was about to grab Rimmer by his collar. How am I supposed to know where Raon and Dorian are? I just know that they will return safely. Rimmer shook his head with a smile. Stop worrying about him and prepare for the graduation ceremony. He nonchalantly calmed down the trainees and left the training ground. Well, he is right. Raon is smart. I'm sure he is okay. I'm sure Dorian would manage to hide somewhere if something happened. Yeah, I'm sure there are some circumstances. Even the instructor looks slightly cool when he says that. The trainees agreed with Rimmer and started training once again. It seemed their year-long survival exam wasn't for nothing, as their sharp pressures soared from the training ground as soon as they started to focus. Help me. Sir Ren. Rimmer was half crying as he grabbed Ren by his sleeve at the midpoint of the North Grave Mountain. Why have Raon and Dorian not yet returned? Where the hell are they? Tomorrow is the graduation ceremony. Despite his nonchalant appearance in the training ground, he was shaking Ren's shoulder with completely impatient eyes. I can't even sneak into the Shadow Agent's office because the Heavenly Blade is guarding them. They even installed spikes on the ceiling. Spikes. Even if they were the slowest ones to depart, they should have arrived a month ago. I don't understand why they aren't coming back. Ha! Ren sighed faintly, looking at Rimmer clinging to him. He was beaten by Glenn until he was half dead after stealing Raon's information from the Shadow Agent's office a few months ago, having entered through the roof. After that, the swordsman from the Heavenly Blade started to guard the Shadow Agent's office all the time. I can't obtain young Master Raon's information either because of Sir Rimmer. What? You still can't? Indeed. The head of house has rated the information about Sir Raon higher than the special rate. Phew, he should outright care for him if he cherishes his grandson so much. The way he keeps watching him from behind makes him look like a stalker. Rimmer complained, kicking a pebble on the ground. Glenn had always been with Raon when he was a baby, and when he learned the 10,000 Flames cultivation, yet he never showed it on the outside and pretended he didn't care. People said that old age made you stubborn, and he was as stubborn as a cow. I agree with you. Ren nodded bitterly. Just like Rimmer, he wanted Glenn, Raon, and Sylvia to live like a family. Fortunately, I do have a piece of information regarding that. Information? Yes. 1 week after we got the report about Sir Raon's return, the Heavenly Blade swordsman went towards Haben Castle. Ah, which means? Yes. That must be the measure to protect the girl that was attacked by Eden when Sir Raon was around. Considering the fact that the head of house and the Heavenly Blade haven't done anything since, there shouldn't be any issues. Oh. Rimmer's depressed expression brightened at once, like turning on a magic lamp. Then, let's investigate it properly. Pardon? Since we aren't certain, let's sound out the head of house. Wait. If you do that. Pfft, it's okay. He isn't going to kill me, is he? I'm going ahead. Before Ren could stop him, Rimmer grinned and stood up. Using the power of wind, he ran down towards the Lord's manor. Upon reaching the entrance of the Lord's manor, Rimmer entered while grinning. Ren groaned in a low voice. He could already imagine the red-haired elf's future. Just like he expected, the Lord's manor shook soon enough, and a thundering sound could be heard. Ren prayed for the repose of Rimmer's soul and closed his eyes. Zighart. Annex building. Although the warm atmosphere still remained after Raon's departure, the building was now filled with coldness, as if they were facing the winter wind without any protection. Ha! Why has he not returned? Everyone else has returned. Young Master Raon. The maid sighed deeply, while managing the flower beds. Since Raon was the only one that hadn't yet returned among the 5th Training Grounds trainees, the annex building felt like a mourner's house. Stop sighing. Let's finish the work. Contrary to the depressed voices of maids, a calm voice melted the cold atmosphere. We are almost finished. It was Sylvia. With her abundant golden hair flowing over her left shoulder, she was trimming the flower bed with scissors while smiling faintly. Ma'am, I am sorry. The maids shut their mouths tightly upon seeing Sylvia's smile. It was even more difficult to suppress their tears after seeing the bright appearance of Sylvia, who should have been feeling more miserable than anyone else. That's right. Why, young master is going to return soon enough, so don't worry about him too much. Helen scooched down next to Sylvia and shook her head. Unlike Sylvia, she was unable to hide her feelings as her face turned blue. Raon promised that he would return safely. Our job is to wait here so that he can rest comfortably once he returns. Sylvia met the maid's eyes one after the other and smiled. Ah, yes. All right. I'll prepare the meal. The maids were impressed and started to move to do their jobs. She's amazing. Judiel, who was standing at the end of the line of maids, narrowed her eyes as she watched Sylvia. She must be losing her sleep over her worry. While the other maids also treasured Raon, their feelings didn't match up to Sylvia's. And yet, she was comforting the maids instead of being agitated by the lack of news about her son, which was truly amazing. They don't need to worry about him that much though. Raon had the scariest nature among the people Judiel had met so far. She'd seen people stronger than him multiple times, but she never saw anyone more cold-hearted and scarier than him. Let's finish quickly and make dinner. As Sylvia was about to finish tending the flower beds, a tall man was walking towards them from the direction of the main building. The man with red hair and pointy ears was the 5th Training Grounds head instructor, Rimmer. Sir Rimmer? However, there was something unusual about him. His red hair were charred black, his eyes had been blackened with bruises, and cloth that was dyed red was stuck in his nose. Hey, are you okay? Sylvia opened and closed her mouth like a goldfish and went towards Rimmer. Ah, I'm all right. You don't look all right, though. It's not a big deal. I just met a stubborn bull with a bad temper on my way here. Rimmer waved his hand, telling her that it wasn't a big deal. Bull. It would have been understandable if it was a monster's doing, but since he said it was a bull, Sylvia got curious about what kind of bull could have done that. It's not anything special, but... Rimmer scratched his back and licked his lips. About Raon, you don't need to worry about him too much. What? Did you receive news about Raon? He didn't get hurt or anything. He might be a bit late to the graduation ceremony, but he's going to return soon enough. Ah. Sylvia dropped her scissors upon hearing Rimmer's gentle voice. Her legs were faltering from the intensity of her suppressed emotions bursting from her. Your son, who is also my student, is on his way back. So, don't worry about him. He pat Sylvia's shoulder and smiled. I'll be going, then. Won't you have dinner with? Ah, there's a big gamble going on right now. Rimmer grinned and turned around. He murmured, "Arg, he hit me so damn hard." As he trudged away. Sylvia bowed towards Rimmer, her hands gathered in front of her body. The next day. The great training grounds door, which was the size of the castle gate, was wide open. The ordinary swordsmen and office workers that usually couldn't enter the great training ground were sitting on the chairs at the outer part of it. Sylvia, Helen, and the annex building's maids, who had become slightly brighter thanks to Rimmer, were also sitting in a corner. They looked like they were praying for something as they looked at the training ground's entrance with their hands gathered together. Right before the sun reached the center of the sky, the 5th training ground's trainees, wearing flashy formal coats, entered one after the other and lined up at the center. They still looked young, but the faint pressure coming from them didn't lose to an official swordsman. Damn it! Is he still not here? But he used to be so punctual. Raon, Dorian. Come back already. Their eyes were reflecting more worries than nervousness, and they kept glancing back, as if they were waiting for someone. The temporary seats were gradually filled as time passed. The executives, such as the division leaders, squad leaders, and the heads of the direct line and vassal houses, went to sit at their assigned places. They were people that didn't usually show up. Ha! Rimmer was standing next to the trainees, giving a jaw-dropping yawn. His easygoing appearance suggested that he didn't care about the graduation ceremony at all. While the people gathered in the training ground were watching the trainees with excitement, anticipation, nervousness, and worry, the swordsmen standing in front of the door slammed the ground with their flagpoles. Thud! They gathered people's gazes with a heavy resonance, before spreading the flags to both sides. The true ruler of the North, Lord Glenn Sieghart, is entering. Greeting the Lord. Upon hearing that sublime shout, the swordsman inside the training ground stood up, then knelt. With his discolored blonde hair swept back, Glenn Sieghart crossed the training ground wearing a blackish-red coat. Feeling the overwhelming pressure coming from the transcended warrior god, cold sweat ran down people's back, preventing them from raising their heads. Whir! Until he sat down on the throne, everyone inside the training ground even forgot about breathing and wished for the time to pass. Everyone, rise. Yes. Everyone stood up at once upon hearing his order. They didn't decide to do so by themselves, their bodies were moving on their own in response to Glenn's intimidation. Head instructor, begin. Head of house, 2 people haven't arrived yet. Can you wait for a little bit longer? Even though the returning period wasn't exactly fixed, they must have been aware that the graduation ceremony is held in February. They fail if they still haven't returned. Raon is the top trainee, and Dorian, huff. All right. Rimmer rubbed his fingers, trying to buy some time, but he turned around immediately upon receiving Glenn's threatening gaze. He couldn't resist him because he had been beaten up the day before. We will start the 5th training ground's graduation ceremony. With 43 people total, 41 people currently present, and 2 people missing, the 41 of them here. Ha! As he was talking about the number of people, low footsteps could be heard from the arch-shaped door of the great training ground, which had started to close. Step. Although it should have been covered by the noise of the numerous people present, the clear footsteps pierced everyone's ears. That sound contained the dignity of Glenn Sieghart, the cheerfulness of Rimmer, and the massiveness of Milland. As the footsteps that gathered people's attention grew closer, everyone inside the training ground turned to look. Black Shoes crossed the door. A man, who looked more noble than the flashy clothes he was wearing, showed himself. His blonde hair was shining brilliantly under the sunlight, and his serious red eyes were drawing everyone's attention. His good looks could be called peerless as he glanced through the training ground and smiled. I don't need such a welcoming ceremony. Raon Sieghart. The man that had grown up more than anyone else has returned to the heart of Sieghart.